Welcome to the 46th Mill Valley Film Festival. We're so happy to have you here. Tonight, we are incredibly delighted to be showing American Fiction, directed by Cord Jefferson. It is an amazing film, and we could not be happier to be presenting it to you. I'd like to thank our sponsor, Marin Magazine, for making this possible. You know, we just feel so fortunate to have Cord here with this film. You'll see for yourself. We're going to be bringing him up shortly, and what an amazing film this is, and what an amazing year it is for cinema. And we're so happy that we've been able to share this film and many others with you. You may have seen this QR code here. And I want to thank everybody over the last 6 days who have donated to our resiliency campaign. It's an important thing. As you all know, many nonprofits have suffered during this time, and none more than the arts and those arts organizations that are public-facing and deal with venues. So we really appreciate your support. And we believe, and this is proof, people are coming back to the theater. And theatrical exhibition is here to stay, and it will be here to stay in this theater for another 100 years.
And I'm going to jump in because, you know, it does take a village. We have another sponsor tonight, Daniel and Michelle Kenyon. They are, well, yeah, give them some applause, too. Daniel has been an incredible supporter of Mill Valley Film Festival and the California Film Institute. He's on our board, and we're very glad to welcome him and Michelle here tonight as well. Thank you.
We want to say a few words before we present an award. As you know, this is our special spotlight program for directing, and this is a first feature by Cord Jefferson. This film manages, I do not want to give away any spoilers, but let's put it this way. In describing it, you use a lot of adjectives that it's not just a drama, it's not just a comedy, it's more. So we're really happy to have Cord with us. Shall we bring him up now, or you want to say a few words?
Give me a moment here, because, you know,
You have something to say?
I always got something to say. This is a year of directors for us, you know, by wonderful happenstance. And it's so incredible when you see the work of somebody who is making their first film, and it is so beautifully put together. And it's a reminder that really what makes a director is experience, life experience, and that whole, you know, being a considered human being. And Cord Jefferson has that from his work as a writer for many years, both as a journalist and in television. And this film won the People's Choice Award at Toronto, which is a big deal. It's known as a very important marker on the journey of a film. So we're thrilled to honor Cord Jefferson for this breakthrough moment in his life and in his career with this Mill Valley Film Festival Award for directing. Cord, please join us.
Thank you so much.
This is your award.
Thank you so much. This is a, you know, I was thinking about what to say in such a moment of honor like this, and I was thinking that maybe it's best to quote a favorite artist of mine, who is Erykah Badu. And Erykah Badu says, she has a quote where she says, "Now be careful, because I'm an artist and I'm sensitive about my shit." And I say that to say that, you know, making a piece of art and putting it into the world is a vulnerable thing, whether you've done it for 100 years or a couple days. It requires a vulnerability. that is scary. And you know, I'd written stuff before, but I'd never written a movie before, and I'd never directed anything before. I'd never directed traffic before. So to step onto a film set and direct a feature film was a very, very harrowing, terrifying experience and intimidating every day. And so to come to a film festival that has such a prestigious history and sort of like such a great pedigree, I just found out that one of my favorite films ever showed here, which is The Player by Robert Altman. And so to find out that sort of like I'm in that sort of company, that I'm sort of literally on the path that some of my heroes were on, and for directing, not writing, this thing that I sort of did and was very, very terrified to do, it really, really, really means the world to me. So I want to thank you both so much, and thank you all for being here, and thank you to all of the Mill Valley Film Festival. Yeah, so thank you, Zoe and Mark, for this incredible honor. It really means a lot to me.
Thank you, Cord.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Truly. Thank you so much. Thank you. And thank you all for being here. You know, just one more thing is, you know, when I went to direct the film, I asked a friend of mine who had just finished his first feature if he had any, you know, advice about directing a movie, and he said, just be careful, because if you go on set every day and you're a jerk and you're rude and you're upset, regardless of how exhausted or frustrated you are, then that energy is going to permeate the entire set, and everybody's going to be rude and upset and yelling, and it's going to be a miserable experience for everybody the entire time. And so I had a sort of like little practice that I did on set, which was always that any time that I was feeling tired or frustrated or you know, cold or hungry, and I felt like lashing out, I would always just sort of stop, and I would sit there and I would remind myself that everybody that I was surrounded by, all these people who were on set, were there. They were missing time from their families, they were missing time from their friends, they were missing concerts that they wanted to go to or birthday parties they wanted to go to, in order to sort of help me make this movie, in order to help me sort of execute this vision that I had. And immediately, as soon as I thought about that, every bad feeling that I had melted away, and I was just sort of filled with the feeling of gratitude and appreciation and love. And that continues here. You're all a part of this. I feel so, making this movie was the honor of my life, and I'm really, really, yeah, I know that you guys could be in any number of places. You know, it's a film festival, there's other movies playing. You could be outside enjoying the incredible weather that you have up here. This is an amazing city. But you're here, and I really, really appreciate you being here. And I think that, to echo something that Mark was saying, that I'm really happy you're seeing it in this environment. This is a movie that I made to be enjoyed with other people. I think that I love the Nicole Kidman AMC ad as much as anybody else. But I think that sort of like, but I think that the one note that I would have for that AMC ad is that she's in an empty movie theater, and sort of like that's not why you go to the movies. You don't go to the movies to sit in an empty theater. You go to the movies to be around a bunch of people, and we need to sort of start thinking of the theatrical experience almost like live music. Like, you have a record player at home, and you could play a record at home, but it's not the same as when you're surrounded by hundreds of other people enjoying this journey together. So I'm really happy that you're here. I wanted this movie to be fun. I wanted people to leave with a smile on their faces. So I really hope you enjoy it, and I will be back after the screening.
Have a great screening.
Thank you so much.
Please help me welcome back to the stage Cord Jefferson.
Thank you so much. Thank you for watching the movie. Thank you for staying for the conversation.
Yes, you guys just watched something very entertaining, and hopefully this Q&A will be as well. So I want to do something a little unconventional and start with the ending.
Okay.
What inspired you to do the different types of endings?
So this is a spoiler for people who haven't read the novel, but the ending of the novel is the first ending. He goes up to the stage and he approaches the microphone, and then the novel ends, so you have no idea what he says. And I knew that if I were to make that the ending of the movie, that people would be furious. And so, you know, it's a satisfying end to the novel, but it wouldn't be a satisfying end to the film. And so, when I was trying to think of what the ending would be, I sort of tried so many different iterations, and then eventually one of the producers, Ben LeClaire, said, you know, try to think of an ending that feels like it's as sort of audacious as the rest of the film and feels like a big swing the way that the film's a big swing. And so, you know, I mentioned The Player earlier, and I think that the ending of The Player sort of is, this is kind of an homage to The Player. It's sort of a kind of like metatextual ending that sort of like helps you feel, makes you feel like you are part of it, and sort of that you know, that it exists in the real world, that in the way that, I don't know if anybody's seen The Player, but if you've seen The Player, you probably recognize the similarity. And so it was, to me, just trying to take a swing the way that the rest of the film took a swing, and didn't just sort of like give you the, you know, give you the standard kind of, because like also, you know, the original ending to the script was actually the second ending, when he goes to Coraline's house and says, and sort of like makes peace with her. So again, that never felt right. It just felt like rom-com-y, the way that he says it feels rom-com-y. And so this was the ending that I think that once we, you know, I feel like sometimes great ideas take a long time, and then sometimes they just come to you. And this ending I wrote in about 15 minutes. And it was, and it was the one that I sent in, and sort of everybody agreed upon, like, oh yeah, this is it.
Okay. I wanted to start with the ending while it was fresh in your minds. But to go back to the beginning, what drew you to the story, since it's based on a book?
You know, so I was a journalist for 8 or 9 years before I started working in film and TV. And toward the end of my journalism career, I wrote this essay called The Racism Beat, which was about how I had reached this point in my career where it seemed like the thing that people were primarily coming to me to write about would be like, you know, Trayvon Martin's been killed. Would you write about this? Or, you know, Mike Brown has been killed. Would you write about this? Or, you know, this person has said something racist about President Obama. Would you write about this? And it felt like there was just like this revolving door of misery and racism and violence and death and sort of like that. And it was like, and I started to feel like, oh, is this the best thing that I have to offer? Is this the most interesting thing that I have to give people as a writer and as a journalist? And so when I left that, I was very excited to get into film and television, because I was like, oh, finally I'm in fiction. We can do anything. It's just sort of, we can write about anything we want to write about without any restrictions about sort of reality or you know, things that ground the story. And then I got into the industry, and then you know, lo and behold, people came to me and they said, you know, do you want to write about this crack dealer? Or do you want to write about this slave? Or do you want to write about this gang member? Or do you want to write about this young black teenager killed by the police? And I thought, like, oh, even here, you know, this is the most intriguing thing that I have to offer as a black writer, is sort of like these same stories of degradation and violence and trauma. And it started to feel, it feels bad. And it feels bad because, to me, the underlying suggestion there is always that it's an inability to see my life as being something that you can relate to. And it seems like an inability to see black people as fully layered, nuanced, complex human beings with as much breadth and depth to their lives as everybody else. It's sort of, it's this idea that we can be defined by this very specific segment of circumstances and tragedies, and that sort of like defines our entire lives. And it just felt like this is, you know, there's more to us than this, and we are not sort of relegated to these moments of tragedy and misery. And so I sort of had, this is something I've been feeling since I started working, since I was a journalist. It's something I'd been talking with my journalist friends and, you know, and other people about for decades. And, you know, it's not just relegated to black experiences. You know, I have a lot of Mexican friends who say, like, why every time something is shot in Mexico is that they're that weird orange filter, and it's always about like cartel violence or somebody sort of like fleeing their sort of like awful circumstances for the border where they're going to have a better life in the United States. Like it just feels like a lot, you know, a lot of people, I think, just sort of feel like they are only having a very certain segment of their experiences reflected to them in culture. And so, and then on top of all that, it was, you know, I have 2 older siblings. We've had a push and pull relationship over the years. Sometimes we're at a peak, sometimes we're at a valley. I have a father whom I love very much, but who is sort of like is an overbearing presence in mine and my brother's lives. The way that sort of, you know, the father's you never see him in the film, but he's clearly sort of like his presence looms large. My mother died 8 years ago from cancer, and not dementia, but I flew home to be with her as she was sort of in hospice, and before that, my oldest brother had sort of like been the one who had been living at home and sort of taking care of her and taking her to her chemo appointments. So all of it was just this strange number of connections to my personal life as well as my professional life, to the point that by the time that I was done reading the book, it felt like, I don't know if you've ever had this experience, but it felt like it was a book written specifically for me. Like somebody sat down to write me a present. That's how I felt when I was reading it.
Okay. And when in adapting it, did you struggle with like keeping your own voice but also honoring the author? Yeah. And I think that, you know, there's things, sometimes big things that you have to change in order to sort of like make, so for instance, you know, another spoiler alert for the book. In the book, his sister is murdered, and I'm like a chapter away from that.
I'm sorry. Yeah, but you know, if you have a murder in a film, it's going to be a particularly sort of like his sister is murdered by an anti-abortion activist, and so it's sort of it's especially politically charged, and it's like there's no way to put that in the movie and then not have that become a big part of the narrative. You can't just kind of gloss over that. And so there's some sort of major things that I changed, and then also just, yeah, there was, you know, I'm certain there's sort of like stuff that I brought to it that Percival didn't bring to it, but that, you know, one of the greatest compliments I've received about the film was from Percival. I brought Percival and his wife, who's another great novelist named Danzy Senna. They came to watch the movie at my house when we were still sort of in post on it and tinkering with it, and that I was drenched in sweat by the time he stopped watching and sort of the movie was over. And but he said the thing that I really love about it is that you made something that's yours. And he said sort of like you took the book, but also I feel like you've made something unique and a piece of art that sort of like stands unto itself, and it's not just, you know, a carbon copy of the novel. And so for him to give me the blessing, that was the biggest. It was one of the biggest coups for me. One change I've read enough to know is the book takes place in D.C. And so I was curious, what made you switch it to Boston? I originally switched it to New York because I was told that sort of I lived in D.C. for about 18 months one time, and I just felt like, you know, why not set it in New York? I think that it was initially about like money, and then New York was too expensive, so then we moved it to Boston. There was no sort of, I think it would have been fine in D.C. I think it would have just been a little bit more expensive. I think that was just sort of like a financial consideration. Oh, see. I thought it was going to be a deep meaning. But, you know, we don't really see films about black people in Boston, even though we're there, so it's nice. Exactly. It's a very funny film. Both times I watched it, I laughed throughout. But then when I was looking back on it, Monk is kind of really going through it throughout. So how did you balance the humor with the seriousness? To me, that was never I always feel like, you know, life is neither a comedy nor a drama, right? Sort of, so even in the worst of circumstances, we all still find ways to, you know, I think that one of the things that's beautiful about, I think, black people and Jewish people and queer people and sort of all kinds of people who have been oppressed, and also just human beings in general, is that even in the worst of circumstances, we have found ways to find joy and to fall in love and to dance and to sing and make music and to cook together and share each other's company. Like this is, I saw Zone of Interest about a month ago, and I don't know if you've seen. This is not a huge spoiler, but there's a part in Zone of Interest in which this little girl finds a song that's written by a prisoner in Auschwitz, and she's playing the piano and playing the notes written on the paper, and then the lyrics to the song are, it says, even in this place our hearts are warm. And I remember that I got goosebumps when that happened in the movie, just because I think that is sort of like the beauty of human beings, is that even in our worst moments, even in sort of like the worst circumstances anybody could possibly be in, our hearts are still warm and we still find ways to enjoy ourselves and find joy. And I think that we have to. And I think sort of like in the worst of circumstances, you have to. If you can't find that, then you're really in trouble. And so for me, despite the fact that Monk is going through it, it's important, you know, every time that I've been going through it, I've also found ways to laugh and enjoy myself. Mm-hmm. I think that if you can't do that, then everything really is lost. And so I never wanted to make a movie. I think that these, obviously we're talking about serious issues, these issues of race and identity, and all of this stuff is, you know, I understand that they're important topics. And I think that it's because they're important, not despite the fact that they're important, but because the fact that they're important. I think it's important to also laugh and sort of like find the humanity. I think that's what's beautiful about the human spirit in general.
I love that. Another thing that I loved about the film is throughout, there's so much interesting artwork, and it's almost a character in the film itself. Can you just speak a little bit on that? Yeah. I think we had a tremendous production designer named Jonathan Guggenheim, mm-hmm. who just kind of got it from the beginning. He got it so much that he had it was a very strange coincidence. He created a lookbook for the movie, and he said, "Here's what I think everything should look like." And I was like, "Yeah, this is perfect, exactly right." And I sort of sent it away without thinking about it. And then we cast the woman Miriam Shore, who plays Paula, the book publisher. And I was going through Jonathan's lookbook after we hired her, and he had cast her in his lookbook as Paula. So sort of he had taken a photo of her from a different movie and put it in his lookbook as the person that he was thinking about for the publisher. And it was so weird. And so he and I were on the same wavelength from the beginning of just how everything should look. And he was like, so he went out and found, like, you know, he concocted this entire backstory for the family, and he was like, here's the kind of art that I think that they would collect. And he went out and found a bunch of black artists who had worked in New England and who'd worked in the Boston area and started collecting their stuff and putting it around the family home. So he was just very, very thoughtful in how it was decorated. And, you know, I went through with things and said, like, yes or no, but it was generally just yes. He was just mm-hmm. incredible at his job. And then, so the painting that she didn't want up in her nursing home, is that the same artist as the opening credits? No. Oh, it looks so similar.
No, it does look similar, but the artist in the opening credits is the only thing that Instagram has ever given me in my life is this incredible illustrator named Isabella Cotier, mm-hmm. who's we were thinking about, like, what's the title sequence going to be? And one day on my For You page on Instagram, I saw this really great, lovely, simple illustration of a flower, and I was really drawn to it for whatever reason. And I went to this woman's Instagram page and started looking through her art, and I reached out to her and asked her if she would do the title sequences, and she leapt at the opportunity, and I love them so much. She's amazing.
They are very gorgeous.
Thank you.
I guess I'd be remiss in not mentioning your amazing cast. How did that come about?
I credit Jeffrey Wright largely with that. I think that I started reading the novel with Jeffrey in mind. I started reading the character of Monk in Jeffrey's voice. That's how early I knew that I wanted to try to get Jeffrey right. And so when I reached out to him, he was the first person that I met with. He was the first actor to read the script. And when he signed on, it just sort of, everything became easy. It wasn't easy, but everything became easier, I'll say. So, especially casting. So, you know, that's how we were able, you know, everybody was like, oh my God, I can work with Jeffrey Wright. And so it sort of like started to fall into place pretty quickly. And we got, you know, I feel so fortunate to get the actors that we got. And I also feel like, you know, I feel fortunate. It's one of the reasons why, you know, obviously I want the strike to end for any number of reasons, but one of the reasons that I want it to end is that I think these people, these actors have done such tremendous work, and I obviously want them to be celebrated for it, but I also think that they've done such tremendous work that people don't necessarily expect from them. So I think this is, for instance, like a Sterling K. Brown, people know him from This Is Us, you know, but he plays a much different character in this film. And I think that Eric Alexander, who I grew up watching on Living Single, she was tremendous in that show, was a big part of my childhood. You know, Eric Alexander doesn't get a ton of meaty roles anymore in films, and so it's just, and she's an amazing actor, and she deserves sort of like bigger parts. And I think that and Leslie Uggams, who's like 82 and so good at her job and has been good at her job for, you know, more than half a century now. Like, these are people who have so much to give and who are so talented and good at their jobs, and they made my job much easier just because not only are they incredibly gifted, but they were all, you know, these are people who could do a million different things, and they trusted me to make a movie despite the fact that I had never made a movie before, and they sort of like were willing to put their faith in me. And so, you know, without them, this movie doesn't exist, and especially without Jeffrey, movie doesn't exist.
Okay, and then my last question before we open it up is, your film is very satirical of the American film industry. Were you intimidated at all to make a film critiquing them?
No. I think that part of that is just because of my sort of like, I think, hubris maybe. But I also think that, you know, I think especially, so when they greenlit this movie, I was meeting with a bunch of different producers, and when I met with T Street, they greenlit the movie in the room. They said we're going to make this film, and I started crying in the meeting. The reason I started crying is because I had worked in TV for so long, and I had been at so many different stages of developing TV shows. And then at some point, they all died. They all went away. And it got to the point when I was like, oh, I don't know if anybody's ever going to let me make something on my own. I just assumed that I was getting to a point when it was like, oh, I'm going to be kind of a journeyman TV writer, and I'll work on a lot of people's TV shows, and people say, oh, great, yeah, he's great in the room. But I just didn't think that anybody was ever going to say, like, we're going to let you make this thing that you want to make, and we trust you. And so when they said that, I was truly just, I was crying. It's embarrassing, but it was true. And the reason why I wasn't scared is because I had written what I thought would get made for 9 years in TV, and I had done what I think people expected of me, and I had sort of like worked on stuff that was like, okay, this is going to be the thing that they like. And they didn't. They kept passing on it. And so this was a thing that felt like, okay, here's maybe the thing that they're not going to like, and it's going to be hard. And it was the easiest thing to make I've ever had in my career, truly. And everybody involved has said that this is the quickest they've ever seen a movie come together. I've had several people tell me that this is the fastest they've ever seen a movie get made from script to production. And so I think that, you know, there's a lesson in that. Which is really just, you know, always follow your heart, and always sort of, you know, the minute that you decide to like make something for yourself and not for other people, you know, that might be the instant that they finally recognize you and sort of decide that they want to work with you. So that was so no, I wasn't.
Good. So it turns out we only have time for one question. So does someone have a really good one?
Can we do two?
Can we do two? We can do two.
We can do two.
Right here.
We'll repeat your question. We can hear you.
Or we can do that.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so this notion, if you can speak a little bit on the notion of being a minority in this particular society. So just the concept of minority and not being seen.
There's a lot to unpack in there. She asked, can I speak a little bit about the concept of minority and not being seen as it relates to the movie? I'll say firstly that, and she also referenced that it reminded her a lot of The Invisible Man by Ralph Ellison. I'll say firstly that I imagine this was not my concoction. Was in the novel that, you know, I don't think it's any surprise that the character's name is Thelonious Ellison. I think that's sort of like, that's a very clear reference to what you're talking about. And secondly, yeah, I think that there's a very interesting statistic that I read 10 years ago. It was almost 10 years ago. It was 2014. In 2014, a poll was released that said that 75% of white Americans had not a single friend of color. That's not a single black friend. That's not a single friend who wasn't white. And we're talking about 75% of white Americans. And so I think that, you know, to me, I think that sort of like a lot of what we're seeing in film is reflective of that, and film and television is reflective of that. It's sort of like reflective of like, I don't actually know these people, but here's what I know about them, and so these are the stories that we're going to make. And so I will say that, you know, I don't disagree with anything you've said, but what I think that is important and what I hope the movie can do is, I think that's one of the most beautiful things about cinema, you know, is that it sort of allows us to meet people that we haven't met before. And I think that, you know, and I think that it can be, that can be great, and it can also be terrible. For instance, I think that the first time that I was ever exposed to the concept of a trans person was Ace Ventura. And I didn't know what a trans person was, and Ace Ventura had a trans person in it, and it was, the whole premise was that this was a trans person, a trans woman who was constantly deceiving men and convincing them to sleep with her. And when it was all revealed at the end that this was a trans woman, everybody was really disgusted. And there's an entire scene where everybody's vomiting, and it's really shameful. And then, so that was my initial understanding of like, this is what a trans person is. And then, you know, years later, I watched Boys Don't Cry when that came out. And it was in a completely different perspective on what it is to be a trans person. And it sort of, it meant a lot to me because I had sort of I'd never encountered this kind of person in my real life. This was all just done through cinema. And so I think what I hope with this movie is that people who don't necessarily, look, and I'm not saying that it's anybody's fault that people don't have friends of color. You know, we live in an incredibly segregated country. And sort of like these are institutions in our cities made sure that we didn't really cross paths and know each other. And so I don't fault anybody for that. I'm not saying that people are bad people because they don't have friends of color. That is the reality of the world that we live in. But I do think that there are ways to get out of that bubble. And sort of one of the ways to get out of that bubble is to go to the movie theater and sort of like, and to experience art made by other people. And so that's one of the reasons why I want this film to feel, you know, big tent. I want people to I want everybody to feel like they're welcome here. And I want everybody to feel like they can come in and have a good time and leave and talk about these things with their friends. I didn't want the film to feel like you were going to come in and be scolded or lectured to or told why you should feel guilty or ashamed or angry. I wanted people to just come in and laugh and have a good time and hopefully leave wanting to talk about these things with their friends, because I think that is, you know, we live in such a divided time, and I think that sort of, you know, the only way we're going to get past this stuff is if we feel comfortable talking about these things. And right now, I think a lot of people don't feel comfortable talking about these things. I think everybody's terrified that they're going to say the wrong thing. And, you know, hopefully, if the movie does anything, it sort of gives people an opportunity to just laugh and talk with their friends about this stuff. That, to me, is sort of, you know, I don't want anybody to take away any moral lessons from the film. That's not the intention, but I hope that people leave and just want to chat about it and have a good time with some of their friends and family, perhaps.
I appreciated the lightness of it.
Thanks.
And,
Thanks.
irreverence.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Do we have?
So we don't have a lot of time,
sorry, we gotta go
unfortunately.
one more. Yeah.
Yeah. So one more question. James.
It felt like street poetry, or like slam poetry almost.
Yeah.
And I kind of wanted to know how you guys decided to shoot that and come up with the tone and the speed of it all.
James has asked how we came up with the scene in which Monk is writing the novel, and sort of the characters from the novel appear before him in his study. So one of the great things about Percival's books is that they're always sort of like very weird and a little experimental. And so in the book Erasure, like 115 pages are dedicated to this fake book that he writes. So the entirety of my pathology exists in Erasure, the entire book. So there's like 12 chapters of the book are from this fake book. And so when you're reading it, you're just reading how insane it is. Like, it's like what you saw there is not even half of how insane it gets. And so it's just so powerful that it's difficult to replicate. I knew that I didn't want it to just be a scene where somebody's typing furiously, which we've seen before, and it's like you're supposed to understand the intensity of it based on their eyes and reading the words on screen quickly, and it just felt like that wouldn't have the actual power and depth that the actual novel within the novel gave us. And so I was just sitting there thinking for a while about what could actually do this, and I think that, and also knowing that sort of like, you know, with the ending becoming what it was, it's sort of this, you know, seeding in some surreality earlier into the movie isn't the worst idea to sort of prime people's expectations for the finale. And so so all of that dialogue from that scene is taken from the actual book. Is taken from Erasure. That's sort of like a monologue that one of the characters goes on, and it was this interesting thing where that became sort of a difficult scene in the sort of post process, because Oak, who does the monologue, is so incredible. He was in I first saw him in Hamilton. He was in Hamilton, the original Broadway run, and then Keith David, who's like a legend and I'm obsessed with. They're so good in that scene that people leave and they're like, whoa, was that good? Like, was this actually good? and I think that, you know, that to me was what I liked, because the performance is incredible. Like, they're incredible actors, and so the performance is obviously incredible. But when you get down into what he's saying, like, he's not, like, it's interesting to call it slam poetry, because it's kind of meaningless. Like, it's just, it doesn't, he's not actually saying anything, right? Like all of that, it's sort of just, it is what he says it is, which is kind of like, let's just do something crazy about your broken interiority and just about how much of a, you know, wreck you are. And I think that, and so we walked this fine edge where it was like, where I think that I really like what happened with it, because I think that it is like, they perform it in such a way that you could believe it becoming successful, right? You could sort of like, I didn't want it to feel so, like, because there's a way to do that scene that's very slapsticky and sort of farcical, and sort of, and if you hire completely different actors, there's a way that scene becomes incredibly silly and sort of like you're laughing the entire time, and it's just outrageous. But I think that that's sort of like, that saps some of the power from what that scene does, which is sort of, it shows you like, oh, this could be a hit novel, this could be a hit film. Like, I think that there are, you know, these things do exist, and so I didn't ever want the movie to feel farcical. I think that a lot of satires sometimes can feel, they feel that they can sort of like, it feels like they can kind of like sink under the weight of the comedy, and sort of like it becomes, the satire becomes farce. And I wanted to make sure we sort of like stayed out of the realm of farce. So grounding it and sort of like making it feel real was very important to me, because, you know, to be honest, like, yes, this movie is a satire, but I honestly believe that this could happen. Like, I think that this could happen in the world. I really do. So I never wanted it to feel like so ridiculous and slapsticky, and I think that scene goes a long way toward helping that.
Thank you.
Thank you all so much.
Yes.
Thank you.
This is a balloted film, so please make sure to tear your ballots at the 5 and give it to the volunteers outside.
Thank you all so much for coming. It means a lot.